gang. Welcome to the Friday episode of the Dogwood Bandits. I'm Orrin Phillips, and today we have a really, really cool episode. We have Filip Sablik and Jeremy Haun. They are two of the founders of Ignition Press. Philip was on a few months back, and he couldn't really talk about too much what was going on, but now the cat's out of the bag. There's a lot of wonderful things that they're doing with Ignition, and as much as about comics, it's about good business, and you're going to hear their business strategy, what they want to do going forward. And it sounds like the two of them have such a good plan in place, and it's going to be so successful. So, without further ado, Ignition Press. We're speaking to Jeremy Haun and the returning Filip Sablik. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah,
So,
happy to be here.
so let's start. How did you guys first meet each other?
Wow,
Whoa,
Right off
that's
the
a deep
bat.
cut. I don't, I honestly, I don't know that either one of us has a crystal clear memory. Like near as we can tell, we met somewhere in the like 2004, 2005 zone. So about 20 years ago, when I was at Diamond and Jeremy was working at Image. And we think it's around the time Jeremy was working on Battlehead, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, there was a group of creators that all came in through Image around the time Jeremy did, and they were really active on the convention circuit. And I was early in my career, so I was hitting a lot of shows, and um, I, I think I probably met Jeremy through B. Clay Moore, who's the writer on Battle Hymn and a frequent collaborator. And we just hit it off. And then at some point, we worked together at Top Cow and became our joke is we were convention wives.
Yeah.
So we would leave our wives behind and we would go hit the road, and for a week at a time we'd be married.
Yeah. Well, and it was we were traveling a lot in those days. I mean, you would end up, it wasn't always necessarily like a convention a month, but there was convention season where you'd end up almost back to back with at least a couple and yeah, it was it as with a lot of, the great things in comics, it's like, if there's the movie there's a documentary about the movie From Dusk Till Dawn, and the documentary is called Full Tilt Boogie. And on the commentary, this is like the thing within the thing within the thing. Forgive me, but in the audio commentary between Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino, there's this thing where Tarantino says, when you're a kid, your best friend, you like hang out with them every day, and then you would go home and you'd call them and then you'd talk about stuff, and it was like this thing. Now kids just play video games together all day, but back in the day, you hung out all the time. And as you get older, that slips away. You don't really get to spend as much time around the people that you truly love unless you figure out a way to work together. And I think that kind of became this tenet through our relationship was we wanted the chance just to work together. We believed in both, as creators and people in the industry and as friends. And so it's just a great serendipitous thing.
That's right. That's right.
So, was the plan always to start a project together like this, or was it just did that sort of happen over time that this idea started to formulate for Ignition?
It was always my plan. I don't know if Philip ever really caught on that I was gonna drag him kicking and screaming into something like this.
Actually, that's a fun little side story that I'll hand it back to Jeremy. But the way that um, Jeremy's right, this was always in his head. Jeremy has always been one of the most entrepreneurial creators that I've ever worked with. He was never just an artist or just a writer or just a cartoonist. He's always kind of thinking about the business. And I remember it was 2018 in San Diego. We were at Comic Con, and at the time, uh, we had gotten Red Mother was up and running at Boom, so we were working together again. And we were both at Comic Con, and Jeremy's like, oh, hey, do you want to like come meet up with me and Tim Seeley and Aaron Campbell and a couple other folks we knew for drinks one night. So I went and did that, and we're hanging out, and you know, not really thinking of it at all. And towards the end of the night, Jeremy kind of leans in and goes, "Hey, buddy, can I talk to you?" Like, sure, you can always talk to me. What's going on? He's like, "No, can I talk to you outside?" Like, oh, and now I was raised Catholic, so immediately I'm like, what did I do wrong? Speaking me outside, my friend. And 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 that was the first time that, you know, Jeremy talked to me about it as more than what we've all done for 25 years, which is you sit after hours in a convention bar and you go like, if I was master of the universe, this is how I would do things. Right. Anyway, back to you, Jeremy.
No, no, I mean that's I think about that moment all the time and where we are now and like um that that was really so much of the start of where we are. And it took a long time. I mean, we had this whole crazy pandemic in the in the middle of it that sets everything back. I mean, no, like the we were having the conversation initially about this over the course of a year, right? And we were
Mhm.
talking about it and we're like, hey, I think we might make this happen. I was really getting there. Um, Stuff was falling into place, and then, you know, then March of 2020 happened, and everything just stopped. And I didn't even know if we were going to be able to pull this off, for a long time after that. Um, but the reality of it is that is that there, comics is a small community comparatively anyway. But like you start thinking about skill sets and you think about people that can actually really not just have their head in the right place or their heart in the right place, but can actively make things happen. And when you sit down and you make a list of people that can be publisher of and not a boutique company, because a boutique company you can, kind of have some misses here and there. You can get, you're not using really, big numbers, big plans and stuff like that. You're like, who could actually make this really, really happen? There's maybe three people on that list, and
I was
and
number four.
the others said no, hell no, and then I got to know. Philip was always at the top of that list. I mean, and in fact, I mean, when you look at who we have in this company, I mean, when we when we put together that list, when we were talking about that, like Philip and Jamie were, Philip as publisher, Jamie as editor-in-chief. They were the creme de la creme gets. They were the guys. And to get both of them and then to have this build into what it has become, both on a relationship level, but also on a business level, it's been amazing.
That kind of leads to a conversation that Philip and I had about putting a team together, getting the right people in the right places. Um, talk a little bit, and you just sort of mentioned Jeremy, but the strategy you guys came up with that, okay, this is the right person because A, professionally, but also personally, because you have to interact with these people and you want to make sure that everyone's on the same page, everyone's rowing the same direction. What's the process like for getting a team together?
I think it's both fun and also, a tremendous amount of work. I've got three younger siblings, and when they were first coming into the workforce, they would ask me for like interview advice, and I would always tell them, look, all you can do is go in there and be the best version of yourself. And if you get passed over for something, chances are it has nothing to do with your qualifications. Reality is that outside of our family and our closest friends, these are the people we spend the most time with on any given week, right? And so that chemistry of personality and shared values and um, work styles are critical, and I think both uh, well, all of us, but certainly Jamie and I, as folks that have run, larger departments, what we've learned through trial and error is that it's better to put that work and that effort in on the front end and make sure that, the folks you're bringing in are a good fit, not just for the company, not just for us, but also for the people that are coming in, right? Because they're taking a big leap of faith with us. And so, we actually just announced that we added two more folks to the company this morning. That press release went out, and you know, we're what are we 8 7 8 months into this process now, and these are folks that we've been talking to for months. In the case of Scott Newman, who just joined as our director, somebody that we've been working with since last year on a freelance basis. Um, but you have to have all those you know pieces fit. They have to fit together in a way. You have to make sure that the folks that you're bringing in are not just going to gel with you as like a, a supervisor or a founding member of kind of like the management team, but also with each other, and that they complement each other. Um, so I guess the answer to your question is we put a lot of time into it. We spend a lot of time with the people that we're looking to bring into the company, so that we can get to know them, so that they can get to know us.
Yeah. And so much of this is because on one hand, it's about skill sets, right? It's about making sure that each person comes in with their particular skill set and adds something. If you have two people that think the way Philip does, that's not really as beneficial as having the way Philip thinks about things and the way Jamie thinks about things. We had a meeting on Friday, and you know, no matter what, there are situations where stuff gets hard in business and in making these things. And I was sitting there listening to the two of them and the way that they reason, the way that they thought through those things. Philip was coming at it from a personal standpoint, from but also a business standpoint. And Jamie was coming at it from a personal standpoint and a business standpoint. And they listened to each other. They trusted and understood what they were bringing to the table. And everything that we did became a little bit better for it, a little bit better for it. And that's amazing to me. I am so proud of every member of our team, and another thing that talking about, like, spending time with it and really thinking through it, like Philip said, is we trust each other to also see what the need is in our individual departments. And, we go through the lengthy process of saying, like, hey, we want to bring in one of our first two real hires uh were Bree Sarpy and Maggie Howell. And like Maggie was in editorial, Bree was in marketing, and and they came in because Philip had a great working relationship with Bree before this. Jamie had a great working relationship with Maggie, and they believed in them and their skill sets. And then we just talked to them as individually and as groups, and you could see the pieces fitting together, man.
When you're going into a venture like this in this arena, you have what everyone knows are the big three. Do you go into saying to yourself, we're going to be competition for the big three? Or do you go in saying we're going to be an alternative to and find our own space in a world that includes the big three?
I think the way that we approached it was we wanted to run our own race. and we wanted to create our own space, in part as a response for things that, the three of us and our fourth partner, Eric, saw as kind of recurring gaps in the marketplace, issues that just continue to happen year after year after year, and nobody seems to be stepping up and trying to solve them, in part because they are challenging. They are hard, right? If it was easy to fix, people would have fixed it. So it's kind of a combination of wanting to address those things, but then also saying, okay, how do we build a comic book company that is responding to and addressing the needs of, like, not just the creators, not just the retailers, but the customers as they exist right now, right? Um, because if you think about it, you know, you can go down through the top 10, and probably the newest company was still founded pre-pandemic, right? And so we really looked at it as, how do we look at the reality we exist in today and meet the customers where they are, try to broaden the market, and in the process solve some of these issues that we have seen occurring over and over.
Absolutely. Now, when you guys are starting to think about what titles you want, creators you want, you know, are you looking to a little bit of everything? Maybe some superhero books, maybe some, true life books. You have murder podcasts and stuff like that. How are you trying to spread it out so it's a little bit of something for everyone?
Wait, I mean, I think that our first goal was to empower creators to tell the stories that they want to tell. Like if you start there,
Mhm.
if you say to a creator, hey, and I can use myself as an example, um, there's always the stories that like a creator genuinely really, really wants to tell, but they hold them back. You're like, I don't know. I don't know if I have, if I can get this approved over here or because of whatever, it's, legitimate reasons for everything. But like, I don't know if I can get this approved over here, or I don't know that I have the personal budget to fund this at this point. I'm going to put that off. Whatever the situation is, it's a thing that we do. So you end up taking those projects and kind of holding them back, and they become these precious little you know, your beautiful angels, But we wanted to give creators a space to bring those things, to really like bring us the story that you've been scared to pitch to somebody else. Give us the story that you've always wanted to do, but just never been sure. you know, if it scares you, that's a good thing,
Mhm.
and we really believe in that. You just
I,
good. Sorry.
I was going to say, ironically, Oren, I think you mentioned two of the categories that we were like, but maybe not those,
Yeah. Right.
So it's like everything, but what we told folks is, look, there are plenty of capes and tights
Mhm.
series out there, and again, because one of our primary goals is to reach out to audiences that aren't already in comic book shops and in bookstores picking up graphic novels. Um, that that's really kind of, for the most part, you know, targeting a series towards an audience that everybody else is already serving, right? And so, our joke with creators is like, look, if you have the next Kingdom Come, we're happy to take a look, but chances are, um, it's like the last two big superhero franchises are probably Invincible and The Boys, right? And you know those are two in the last 20 years, maybe.
Well, and if you look at what those truly did, it was something completely different than anything that was out there. And now that you have those, you got to figure out what's completely different than not only every other superhero title out there, but also different than those things. So yeah, if somebody has the game changing thing, we're gonna listen. We just probably are gonna be little hesitant to do that when there's so many other cool things that we can do.
But just to give you a sense of, our the books that we're launching just this year, range from uh, Jeremy and Mike Dissaran's project, which is a true crime horror series. Uh, Cullen and Marika Cresta are doing a horror series set in a prison environment that's really fascinating. It's kind of a disaster prison movie with a horror tinge. Um, Leah Williams and David Ballion are doing a ultra sexy heist uh, project. Stephanie Williams and Letizia Canonici are doing uh, like a body horror series that is very much in the vein of like a Sinners or something like that. Um, and then Inaki and Roy Miranda are off doing like a heavy metal fueled like fantasy science fiction series. And then Jim McCann and Joe Eisma are doing a beautifully grounded like romantic comedy mystery series. And that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg, right? The breadth of material that we're looking at has been so exciting because, as Jeremy said, when you tell a creator like what's the thing that you've been scared to pitch, you get some really interesting projects coming your way.
And there is like interestingly enough, there's almost like a qualitative, like there's so much quality. It's like you look at this stuff and it's like, yeah, these are very different stories one to the other, but my God, they all feel like everybody on their A game. I
Mm-hmm.
s- I saw some pages, just I'm trying to not spoil anything, some Philip will strangle me, but like I saw some pages just the other day and I was like, oh, what I was expecting here, this is it is above and beyond. And it's people that are excited just to do cool stuff. Every creator, every group of creators that we have, you see people that have worked together before. Mike and I have worked together before, but then other people that are coming together for the first time, and you've seen them make magic. And I don't know. When we started this thing, I don't know that we had any idea about what that first lineup was going to be. But now that we're looking at it, I'm like, ooh, this is beautiful. Like, this is exciting.
Now, right now, and with you, Jeremy, with your series, are you guys looking at series that have a contained story to it where there's going to be a beginning and an end point? Or are you also going to have open-ended series that could continue, a long run as well?
In with Murder Podcast, it is a finite thing. Just because that's a lot of the times I love endings. I mean, I also love endings that kind of mess with you a little bit. Like that there can be more of something. That's my favorite thing.
Mhm.
And if you can get to it, and if schedules work out, I mean, the hard thing is, I've got five things in various stages of development. Mike's got stuff he's wanting to work on. You have stuff that you got to do, but like, we wanted to tell a finite story here, and that's a good thing. That gives people, lets people. I mean, first of all, if we came out with 12 fully ongoing series out the gate, I don't know that people would be like, I can trust that any of these are going to come to any kind of satisfying conclusion. Now we can say, hey, we believe in these things and we're going to back that up.
Mhm.
We have to prove that a little bit to you too. So while um Murder Podcast is a finite series, first of all, it started out and I had a real genuine conversation, you know, recently where I was like, hey, this needs to be a little longer. And one of the proud moments of my career is when the people that you're working with say, yes, we support that. this story needs to be the length that it needs to be. And we've also had creators that have come in and they're like, here's the short version. And we're like, okay, now tell us the long version. So, it is what it needs to be. And again, there's going to be a through line for all of this. You're going to see us saying it's about what the creator wants. It's about giving to that.
Yeah. And I think, as a publisher, I look at it and I go, you need a mix. You need things that people can jump in on and go, you know what, this is a relatively small commitment. I'm going to get a complete story. And then the market and fans also want things that like, hey, this is something I commit to, and if I like it, I know it's something that's going to tell a long form story. So currently we've got a good mix of both. And then there's also the things that I experienced this plenty at Boom. Both uh, two of the biggest franchises at Boom started off as limited series. Lumberjanes was originally greenlit as an 8-issue series, and uh, Something's Killing the Children, believe it or not, was originally greenlit for 5 issues. And obviously, the fan reaction, the community that built around that helped fuel it into the franchises that they are. And I think that's the other piece of how we're approaching this is like Jeremy said, it's really about supporting the creator, and that also means supporting them in building their brand and expanding their brand and building a community around them so that they're empowered to tell the stories they want to tell, and that um, as that community builds, they can be telling us, hey, this is the thing that we really love and we want to see more of. How do we get more of it?
With these creators that you guys are looking at and targeting, what are certain aspects about them that you feel would be so important to have, in the company?
They all got to be badasses.
There you go.
That's, I mean,
I think in general, we had a couple of guidelines we put in place for ourselves as we were uh, looking at potential creators we wanted to talk to and bring in. And, um, you know, it's been a great mix of folks that we actively went after, and then also folks that heard about Ignition, got excited, and said, "Hey, I want to be part of this." Um, but it is just like hiring any other position, right? It's a mix. You got to believe that the skill set and the talent is there. That's first and foremost. We every single person that we have a project with, we believe that they're incredibly talented, and in some cases, feel like they need a bigger spotlight on just how talented they are, and they need a better environment to do their best work. Jeremy talked about these folks are bringing their A game, and part of that is creating the environment where the production schedule and the advances and everything that goes into it, the support structure fosters that and allows that to happen. Two, we had an internal rule that was the life's too short rule, which is basically just like anybody we would bring in to the team. It's like, I don't care how talented you are. If you are not someone we want to be spending a lot of time with, it's not for us, and that's okay. Um, and then the third thing was creators that saw the value and were just excited about the marketing and brand building efforts we wanted to put into the company as they are about creating the work. We're not a great place for somebody that's just like, hey, I'm just going to like turn the thing in and then send me my check and I'll, see you when the book comes out. We really, I think, are finding that the creators that are responding the most are the ones that are just as excited about building out their newsletter, building out a podcast, creating a community, and really getting in the weeds on how to do that with us.
I would say that's a really good point, because what you guys are doing, it's a lot more than we're just putting out some comic books. You're creating communities. You're spreading out to hit every aspect of social media and reaching as much of an audience as possible. Was that in the game plan from the very beginning, to be a little different by creating all these branches from the company?
yeah. I mean, look, the comics industry, it doesn't matter what part of it you're in, from fan to retailer to publisher, creator, whatever it is. This is an industry of risk. The margins are pretty slim. There's a lot of stuff out there. There are so many other asks on your time and money. We're in an industry where, um, you know, we haven't always been particularly great to one another. Everybody's trying to, I mean, to be honest, sometimes everybody's just trying to survive. That's a harsh reality. But from jump, we wanted to look at things and say, like, we can do things differently. We can be here for all these different aspects. It's going to take work. I mean, there have been many, many times over the past eight months and even a bit before that where we had conversations and we're like, this is going to be a pain in our butts. Like, this is going to make our jobs harder. But if, we can play this kind of game, it'll be fine. Like, we could do that. Or we can look at the long game. We can look at investment in partnerships and truly doing things in a different way. And here we are. Hopefully, don't screw up. That's the big thing. Just don't screw up.
Now, how do you guys put yourself in the market so people put eyes on your books? Because, you're competing with a lot of folks. What are you guys going to do to grab those readers who are walking by the comic store and see your book and want to grab it?
I think it's a combination of things, right? So the first and foremost, the goal is we get to work with the creators the minute we sign a deal, right? So we work with them to develop a marketing strategy around them. And our priority goal is how do we create a community, around Stephanie Williams that's opted into her newsletter, that's connected with her, so that when she says, "Hey, I've got a new project I'm excited about," that community wants to support that, right? So that's the case too for the stuff that we're doing with Jeremy, who's on the tip of the spear on all this experimentation. He's got an amazing YouTube video podcast that he's put together called Curious Haunts that we've been helping him build, but ultimately is a thing that he still has to do in addition to writing books and drawing covers and being part of the company. So in all the ways that he does that. So that's step one, is how do we build a community of horror fans around Jeremy? How do we build a different community around but maybe overlapping for Cullen Bunn? How do we build a different community for Stephanie Williams and so on? So that's step one. And part of what we're trying to do, and you can see proof of concept in how we're rolling out Murder Podcast, is make it easier for those folks who we anticipate are primarily not going to be in comic shops already. How do we bring them into the larger comic community, right? How do we invite them in? How do we make it easier for them to connect with the material and then eventually get to a comic shop or order online or whatever they need to do to get the series? And then secondarily, with obviously there's an amazing community within comic shops, and what we're doing there is really focusing on how do we arm our retail partners with material and with point of sales products and items that help them draw attention to Ignition Press creators in their stores, right? Because the reality is plugged in as the three of us are into what's happening in comics, and we're all reading all the press outlets, and we're all paying attention to the YouTube shows, and we're all listening to the podcast because we live and breathe this stuff. The amount of comic store owners and managers that Jeremy and I have talked to over the years, and when you ask them, like, well, how do people find out about the books? Like, what's the best way I can market this project so that you sell more copies? The amount of retailers that tell us, like, large portion of my customers don't know what they're going to buy until they walk into my store on Wednesday and they see the book on the shelf. So armed with that knowledge, the question is, how do you create an environment within the stores? How do you create support for the store owners? Because they don't have the ability to hand sell everything, like they might pick one project a week that they're talking to people about, right? And it's a crowded marketplace. So, our plan is really focused on, instead of, trying to get retailers to put a lot of copies on their shelf using gated incentive covers, how do we incentivize them by giving them material, whether it's ash cans or posters or stickers or a variety of different things that we're arming them with that will actually help the customer in the store see that see Murder Podcast or see another Ignition Press title and go, you know what, that looks like something that I'm interested in. And a piece of that, our philosophy is not making it about us, right? Ignition Press, we hope over time we'll have a community of fans that gets built around it, people that associate the brand with quality and interesting work. But first and foremost, we want them excited about the creators, and then secondly, the work, right? And Ignition Press is kind of third in the list of priorities of what we want people paying attention to.
Are you guys going to be out and about on con season this summer? Talking to fans, talking to other creators, putting the name and the word out there for folks to know that this is a place that you can go to, A, as a fan to get these books, and B, as a creator to have the freedom to put out the books that you want to put out.
A bit, as much as we can. I mean, there is, you know, we our our first thing that we have to make sure that we're paying attention to is getting the books ready to go and taking care of that. As someone that has spent 25 years being a road warrior for comics, uh, my darling, delightful teammates sometimes have to remind me, like, hey, that week is a week that we lose in various aspects of production. So we are having to be cautious this summer and really make sure that we're doing it right.
Mhm.
Um, we're talking yet about the one we're really focusing on.
Well, we've got a couple shows we definitely know our anchor shows, and that the way that we look at comic shows specifically is where are the places that we can have the most impact and interact with all the different members of the community we want to interact with, right? Not just fans, but where are we going to have the best opportunity to talk to creators? Where are we going to have the best opportunity to talk to retail partners, to press? So we know, we haven't announced yet kind of like how we're approaching it, but it will be, I think, interesting and innovative. But we're going to be in San Diego for Comic-Con. That's um, a given for us because it's still, the show that has the widest reach outside of the actual event. We were in New York last year. We're planning on, returning this year, and those are, early conversations that we're having. Jeremy and I were just in Chicago for C2E2. But in some cases, it's about, looking at how can we kind of go in there and efficiently, do some programming, interact with folks, and really minimize the impact of the production schedule. The other thing that we're looking at is, if we're going to travel, how do we use that to support the retail partners? So we're looking at how do we do events that are part of a signing tour that help hit different parts of the country and help, to your earlier question, on like, how do we help these stores maximize the connection with the community that we're trying to build? And then secondly, and this is, something that's a longer term plan, it's like, how do we get folks like Jeremy and Cullen into the places where the audience that they want to serve is going, right? Because comic conventions, while they are broad pop culture conventions, are to some extent preaching to the converted. Like, if you have already committed that you are spending $100 this weekend to go to a comic convention, I don't need to convince you to buy a comic book. You might be a casual comic book fan, but you've you're going there for the cosplay or the movies or the TV shows or the whatever, but you're bought into the culture. Um, what I think we're interested in is, okay, what about the millions of horror fans who have never been to a comic convention, who have never set foot in a comic book store, but that would be delighted to find out that they could start reading horror comic books today and do it until the day they died and never run out, right?
Mhm.
How do we connect with those fans, right? Same thing with, I mentioned we have a really steamy heist book. There is a millions of folks who love, um, you know, romantasy and kind of steamy beach reads that have no idea that there could be a comic book that would appeal to them, right? And so that's what we're really interested in connecting with is how do we get to those folks?
Absolutely. My last question is, let's say it's December 31st, 2025. 2026 is right around the corner. Are there three things for each of you that you wanted to have accomplished this year, and what would they be?
That is a great question. That is a fantastic question.
Yeah, and you got to go first because you're so much more on the ball. You're the publisher. You're good at this stuff.
He's the head honcho.
Um, I think if we're at the end of 2025, looking into 2026, I want to feel like the promises we've made to creators and to retailers and to fans, we have honored and hopefully over delivered on their expectations. Um, I am hopeful that, we at that point have uh, a rousing success in the first Ignition Press TV show, which is The Beauty that Jeremy created with Jason Hurley, and that is creating some real rocket fuel, for attention and again for bringing in new fans. Um, and I think the third goal is I want to make sure that everybody's still having fun because comics are a lot of work. They're a labor of love. Buffett said this industry is driven by more passion than sense. But one of the things we set out to do is create an environment where we feel like people's time and labor is valued and that their lives outside of comics have value. And so if we haven't done that last thing, I will feel like we haven't done the thing we set out to do, which was to create a good quality of life.
And everything I'm gonna like, it's just gonna sound like it's the same stuff that he's saying. I mean, you know, uh, for me, it's having having done the things that we said we were going to do and truly stepping into a place where we can empower new voices.
Mhm.
You know, I love the group that we've built so far, and I just want to continue doing that. It's not just about growth, it's about the right kind of growth. There are so many amazingly talented people out there working day in and day out that maybe we haven't heard of. Maybe you haven't heard, like it's I'm always finding somebody, I'm like, who is this? And they're like, oh, that's like you haven't heard of them. They're doing these, European albums that are mind-blowing over here. I want to empower that and I want to get those people and give those people opportunities to tell the stories they want to tell and share those with a broader audience. Um, I want to just continue growing the company with people that like this group that we're working with so far and talking about like Ignition staff, they amaze me every day. They are so different in the way that they think and work than I do. And I just want to continue to shine a light on the people that are making these things with us and support them and hopefully not be too much of a pain in their ass. And then I this has been a tough year. Like it not nah, let me rephrase. This has been a challenging yet rewarding year. We have worked a lot. I have worked harder than I have ever worked, and in some ways haven't technically produced as much comics work as I normally do because we're building things. We're building things that are special. We're building things for the long game. But even though it's been challenging, it has been incredibly rewarding, and I'm proud of that. And I think in 2026, I want to take the lessons that I learned about the way that we do things as a company and what we can do, build on them, and just continue telling my own exciting, fun new stories. I mean, look, this is all about empowering people to tell story. This is about creativity. I want to continue to do it. I want to help other people do it. And if we do that right, if we pull that off, we win big.
And we're back. I mean, I really like the idea that they want people to pitch them ideas that they're afraid to pitch to other companies. It sort of opens the creativity. It gives readers, different venues for different kind of stories. And Philip and Jeremy are just two of the coolest guys. You can tell that they are passionate about this and they're having fun doing it. And that's the main thing, that this is more than a job. It's something they love doing and they love working together. And it sounds like they have a good crew with them. So continued success with Ignition Press. We'd love to have them back on, talk some more about books they have coming out, and tell your LCS you want the Ignition Press books in your store and pick them up too. So that's what we have for this week. Hope you had a wonderful week. Have a great weekend coming up. More great shows coming next week. So we will see you then.